You think anyone really cares what I've been doing in Amicus? You're not even gonna answer me? Yeah, this is my life now.
This guy.
Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm, where I'm your host Peter, aka LPD Dubuque, the cringiest glover on YouTube.
Stop it. Get some help.
Meanwhile.
So what is it this week that I want to talk about? Well, as you guys know, I like to revisit my old episodes, especially the ones that don't have any video to it, because, you know, it's just a thing that I have. And there was a kind of conversation that a lot of people have asked me past couple of days now, and I figured, hey, why not revisit this episode? Because it was actually a pretty good episode in my opinion. Now, the main thing that I will certainly say is that, yes, this is something that's very prevalent within the gloving community, and it's something that definitely gets talked about a lot, and that is performance anxiety. Why is this such a prevalent thing? Well, there's a whole multitude of reasonings behind performance anxiety and why a lot of people in the gloving community have it and why they deal with it a lot. And I can go on and on forever about it, but I think I can just break it down simply to make it nice and consistent for you, or concise for you guys to understand. So, first thing we need to do is understand what is performance anxiety. Well, performance anxiety is basically also known as stage fright, which is an emotional response that is triggered by your fight or flight response, resulting in a state of fear and anxiety, basically. You know, so if you guys know, there's a few episodes on Family Guy that kind of touched on this. You know, a very classic one is when Stewie was the plug, and then he went on stage and, you know, just stood there and then started crying.
What's wrong with Stewie?
I think he has stage fright.
I think he has stage fright, Peter.
That's what I just said. I said that. Look at Stewie. What a baby.
You know, we've seen this many times on like America's Funniest Home Videos and things like that, right?
Yes, definitely.
But this is something that does happen. And I don't blame anyone who has this feeling, because in all honesty, how often do people get in front of hundreds if not thousands of people on a consistent basis that they can be comfortable doing that? You know, I don't blame anyone who has that kind of issue. But I also understand when it comes to trying to record in front of a camera, because the intention behind what you're doing when you're recording can also affect how you are projecting yourself. And I can totally understand why, because I can certainly tell you the number of times I have to restart an episode, either because technical issues, or I also have to deal with things like stumbling over my own words, which tends to be a very prevalent thing in my episodes anyways, so yay me. Now, there is one major thing I will definitely want to point out called social phobia, which is just social anxiety disorder, which is an extreme case of dealing with performance anxiety. You know, this is when it comes to social phobia, it's one of those such extreme things that literally puts the person into the fetal position, which is, yes, a very comforting position, all things considered. And yes, I know from my own experience, because there are times where I do put myself in the fetal position. It's also because I'm also really cold. You know, that happens sometimes. So this can also be brought upon, you know, performance anxiety can also be brought upon by, you know, low self-esteem or low self-confidence, which I know some people might say it's interchangeable, but that's not necessarily the case. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself, and self-confidence is how you feel about yourself and your work. You know, that's the main thing I will say. Self-esteem is literally about yourself as a person, and self-confidence is about the performance in the work that you put out. Okay, definitely want to stress that. Now, there have been plenty, and I mean plenty, of different performers that have talked about this. There are actors and actresses that still deal with this stuff every time they go on set and start to perform. Most of the time, I will certainly say, even from my own personal group of friends, that once they actually start performing, that anxiety tends to leave because they're keeping themselves busy. Which kind of leads into my mom's greatest advices as well, that she learned from a therapist, is busy hands absorbs anxiety. And so that's where I feel like when people start to lose the anxiety once they start performing, is because now they're keeping themselves busy. And it absorbs that anxiety and turns that energy into the performance that needs to be. You know, you have people that deal with that, but then you also have some people like Ethel Merman, for example, who never understood performance anxiety at all. She said, "This is your job, why are you getting so nervous about it?" Well, there's a multitude of reasons why people get so nervous about doing stuff like that. Now, if you don't know who Ethel Merman is, all you need to do is look up the movies Airplane, or her classic one, No Business Like Show Business, which is actually a really good musical if you guys want to see a good musical. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a pretty long one, but it's actually enjoyable, so go check it out.
People don't tell me what to do. I tell them what to do.
But if you don't want to sit through a nearly 3-hour movie, definitely check out Airplane. I think the runtime's like 87 minutes, so it's not really that long. Go have fun.
You'll be swell. You'll be great. Gonna have the whole world on a plate.
Now, what are ways to get over performance anxiety? Well, there is a good amount of ideas that a lot of people have put out there. And I mean, you can literally go up on the internet and literally look at all the dissertations and research papers that people have done about performance anxiety in and of itself. Though I would certainly say, from my takeaway of this research, even though I did this a long time ago, I still kind of retain a lot of this information. It's really just a matter of how much effort you're going to put into it and how much you're going to work at it to get it done. Okay. The first thing you need to do is you must address and revise any negative thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, feelings about your performances. Okay. It's understandable you're putting yourself in an vulnerable state to be critiqued and criticized, but also praised. And I know to a lot of people the fear of being critiqued and criticized is greater than the hope of being praised and admired for your work. But those negative thoughts will dictate your performance if you let them. You know, there's actually a very interesting clip when it comes to fear from one of my favorite shows, Into the Badlands, which is...
Fear is the strongest human emotion bred into us for one purpose, to keep us alive. But it can also kill us if we let it. It's what makes you faster, stronger, smarter, as long as you control it instead of letting it control you.
Yeah. As much as I know a lot of people might see that as problematic, but I think the terminology and the message is still pretty strong. You know what I mean? Kind of leans into that whole thing that my mom talked about when it comes to busy hands absorbing anxiety. You know, you either let it rule you or you rule it. You know, use it to your advantage. You know, it's turning weaknesses into strengths. Another huge thing that will help you probably overcome it is to learn to just accept yourself and what you're able to do, and not let yourself feel like you have to prove yourself to somebody. Now, I totally understand, especially when people go into competitions or they put out videos and things like that. You are trying to prove that you put in the time and effort to come up with your concepts and work on these concepts, and now you want to show people that. That's great. That's awesome. We love that. But do not feel like you have to have such a high expectation or put these high expectations in the minds of other people, therefore you are perceiving that to yourself. Does that make any sense? Certainly hope so. Because with these high expectations that you put on yourself, you are supplanting it onto your audience, which is going to make you feel like that's what they're thinking to you, therefore feeding into your fear, anxiety, and all that stuff. And that's not going to help. You just need to let that kind of go. Okay, now, there are other methods out there, of course, I'm not going to sit here and say you have to, but medications is a thing. However, I will certainly say this right now. Go see a medical professional if it gets to a point that you actually need to take medications. But there are other cognitive behavioral habits that people have come up with to kind of help break the cycle of the fear and anxiety that tends to come from performance anxiety. As much as some people might discredit those, but you know what? Again, if you want to do your own research, the internet's right there for you guys. Just saying.
All right, then I will.
So, one of the things I will certainly say is that when it comes to performance anxiety, what tends to happen is known as performance avoidance, where you just get to a point where you just don't want to do it because you're just so racked with it that you avoid any instances of, doing what you want to do. Therefore, no one will ever get to see your performances, which is really a shame, which would really suck if that happens, because you put in a lot of time and effort. You want to show people that, right? So, here are 10 tips that are going to help you out that I found that are still pretty helpful, and if you're not entirely sure what I mean by these, you can always ask me questions. There are various ways to do that. Tip number 1, shift your focus on contributing value to your audience. Again, it's to push those negative thoughts out of your mind and not let them rule and dictate how you perceive yourself. As weird as this sounds, and I know I can't believe I'm actually going to use this, but when I was much younger, I had a friend who would talk to me about psychedelic experiences, and instead of being cautious, I guess is the word I'll use, about having a bad trip, they explained to me that you should have the mindset that you'd be like, yep, this is going to be fun, I'm going to have fun doing this, and this is what's going to come out of it in a positive way, instead of focusing and fearing on the potential bad that could happen. Because when you focus on something like that, it tends to manifest, if that makes any sense. So if you focus on the negativity, like, oh, no one's gonna like this show's gonna be trash, that's what you're gonna put out. But if you're gonna be like, I'm gonna have a good fun old time and enjoy myself and put out the best quality stuff that I can, then it's gonna be reflected in your quality work. Makes sense, right?
Right, yeah, got it.
Tip number 2, and I know this is gonna sound weird, but stop scaring yourself, okay? Again, you feel that fear and do it anyways. Another great quote that my mom has taught me when I was much younger, especially when I was in high school, and it really did help with work. And I mean like work as in labor, like working at the movie theater work, not work on my performances, but it does feed into this. So, yeah. Stop scaring yourself is one thing I would say, but my mom will even tell you, feel that fear and do it anyways. Because guess what? That fear is telling you that you're alive. And again, you can let the fear rule you, or you can utilize it to your advantage. Your choice. Tip number 3, refuse any negative thoughts. Again, letting those fears and negative thoughts creep into your mind and you don't push them out, it's going to start affecting you. Again, focus on what you're doing there and now, especially if you're in the middle of performances. Don't sit there and be like, are they enjoying what I'm doing? Because then you're not focusing on what you're doing, you're focusing on something else that's going to cause a distraction. Therefore, your performance is going to suffer. Makes sense, right? Tip number 4, learn calming and relaxing practices or practical habits that help you get into the mindset that you need to perform, whether it's in front of the camera or in live performances. Now, I can sit here and list them all off if you want, but I think that we'll just be here all day if I do that. But one major thing that I've learned to help me is a good breathing technique. You inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Now, when you inhale for X amount of time, you double the amount of time for exhaling. So, for example, if you inhale for 4 seconds, you exhale for 8 seconds. What this does, it does scientifically lower your heart rate, therefore allowing you to keep calm. Okay, and it does help. And one of the major things that even a lot of my friends in the gloving community will even tell you, especially McKinley, is that when you are performing, all you need to remember is to just breathe. And when you breathe in nice and calmly, which what exercise will help, it actually keeps your head clear to have that clarity to do your performances, where you can actually be like, hey, I can actually do this concept here, and it lines up to the music and it actually performs way better than you initially thought, and the reception from your audience is going to be heard. Tip number 5, visualize your success. Now, I know this is going to sound weird because, it kind of goes into that whole spiritualism or spiritualist thing that some people talk about, but to me, it's a way for you to focus your energy on what you want to do instead of letting the fear dictate how you're going to be perceived. You are visualizing what you want and you're going for it. Simple as that. That's pretty much how I'm going to put it for you guys. Tip number 6, exercise healthy behavioral habits. Again, told you about the breathing techniques, but this also kind of extends to just everyday life. Eating a little bit more healthier, doing healthier practices in terms of exercises. And I'm not saying you're saying you have to lift weights. Take up Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a very great example of just realigning your energies that a lot of people do, especially when it comes to spiritualism. And it's just something that allows you to kind of just put yourself in a mindset. It allows you to kind of push everything out and just align everything. Even if you're not into that spiritual stuff, it just gives you a good regiment for you to practice on that gets you in a good mindset. And I'm not saying that you have to do Tai Chi. You can do yoga if you want. Some people are into that too. Or if you want to go lift weights, you can do that too. But just healthy behavioral habits like that do help with performance anxiety because, it feeds into the self-esteem and self-confidence. Tip number 7, prepare your material. Now, this is dependent on what I'm talking about. So if it comes to recording a video, prepare your material as in making sure you have fresh whites, fresh batteries, your camera is set up with plenty of battery life, your camera lenses are clean, everything's put into place. Make sure that you have everything set up properly. Yes, this takes me a good 20 to 30 minutes altogether to get everything the way I want it before I actually hit the record button, but that's absolutely necessary if I want to get the best quality video. When it comes to like live performances at venues or festivals, again, fresh batteries, fresh whites, make sure that you got everything put in place, make sure you have your programming done if you're using progs, make sure that your bulb connections are all nice and good because on-site maintenance will actually happen if you don't take care of your chips properly, especially when it comes to bulbs. But the other thing as well when it comes to that is just making sure that you have like a good strong meal before you go to the venue, because I can certainly tell you the number of times I went to a venue hungry as hell, it definitely affected my performance. So definitely keep that in mind.
It's funny because it's true.
Tip number 8, making connections with your audience. Now, when it comes to recording videos, when you get comments on those, don't hesitate to reply back. Just saying a simple thank you is actually a really good thing because then you're interacting with the audience and making that kind of connection. But when it comes to live performances, when you're hearing those comments as you're performing, do not hesitate to talk back while you're performing. A very common or a very memorable moment for me when it came to that is when the last festival I went to, I was giving somebody a light show and they were like, oh wow, rainbow colors, that's really cool. And I explained to them, I'm like, actually I'm only using 4 colors, which is just red, yellow, green, blue. And it was very interesting to hear their response because they're like, oh wow, I didn't notice that. That's one of those things that allows you to make that kind of connection to your audience, therefore allowing that deeper understanding of your performance, whether it's just understanding the color choices that you make or the flash pattern choices that you make, or even with the concept choices that you make within your show. That's something that they want to hear, and that interaction happens. Now, I know there are some people who are like, you need to do more tuts and stuff like that, which is just their kind of preference, which you could adapt to when you're doing your performances. If you're listening to how your audience is responding to what you are throwing and adjust accordingly, you're going to hear more wows and ahs and oh my goodnesses and stuff like that. That tends to be a thing. So yes, connecting with your audience is very important, and that helps build that self-confidence and self-esteem as well. Tip number 9, stand or sit in a self-assured, confident posture. So instead of slouching like this, if you're sitting, you actually want to sit up and have your back a little bit more straight, have a nice strong posture. Standing, of course, is the same way. You don't want to be slouching over. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, I'm kind of leaning over to give them a show when I'm on. It's true. But you also just want to hold yourself into a higher regard in that sense of just holding yourself in that fashion. It's one of the things that I learned when I was in music class and I was in band in junior high and in high school is posture is going to make or break your performance. You know, if you're not holding yourself to the proper posture to actually do the things, you're not going to perform as well. Same thing applies here. Tip number 10, which is the final tip. Just be yourself and just be natural. Don't try to be perfect. You know, you're trying to set a good standard for yourself and a good expectation for yourself, but it should not feel artificial. It should feel natural. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, that's really hard for me. Well, again, it's going to come with time. The more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So, definitely want to stress that. But overall, you just need to be relaxed and enjoy yourself for yourself. You should not be enjoying yourself for somebody else. Otherwise, what are you doing? You know? So, that's one of the things that I will definitely want to tell you to take away from that. Now, my final pieces of advice is, one, when it comes to recording shows, I know a lot of people will say that I can sit there and throw down as easy as possible, but as soon as I turn on that camera, everything goes out the window. Get that. That tends to happen. The more times you put yourself in front of the camera and hit that record button, the easier it's going to become. One of the things I will say here and now is that you can record a ton of shows that you'll never have to post. The main reason is that I want you to spend the time in front of the camera and actually do live reviews of your performances. The more times you do that, the easier it tends to get. Okay, you get a little bit more comfortable. You get familiar with the whole mantra of what you're doing with your camera, right? When it comes to live events and things like that, I will certainly say if you got more in-person meetups that you can go to, that's going to help you get more comfortable being out in that kind of environment. If you're somebody who attends a lot of festivals, it's just, you know, you gotta put yourself in a situation where you're able to. Now, I really wish I had a place like I did when I lived in Flagstaff where I can go every Wednesday night, so I had a weekly time where I can actually have myself be put out there much more openly. But that is something that you can take in consideration. Though I will certainly say recording in front of a camera kind of helps transplant, you know, that does supplant into live performances, because yes, there are going to be a bunch of people, but I guarantee you not everybody at the event or festival are going to be watching and boring their eyes on you when you are performing in front of a person, you know. And again, you should only care about you and the person in front of you. Again, look at Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Hang, everyone's watching. Don't worry about them. It's just you and me right now.
And of course, I kind of want to leave off with a quote that I get from somebody who I follow for a very long time now. I actually followed them since the very beginning of this podcast as well, which is kind of ironic enough to think about all things considered. It's from the 4-time World's Strongest Man winner, Brian Shaw. Just take it on a day-to-day basis. So find something to be positive about each day and work to get better each day. Just think daily, I'm going to do something to get better. Also, I'm going to find something to be positive about, because if you're positive about your situation and getting better, you'll get better quicker.
Wow! That was amazing!
And I think that still applies to this day. As long as you're keeping that positivity, it's going to reflect in your performances. And we are never going to be perfect. So when we have these discussions and we talk about critique and criticism to work on getting better, you should be using that to get better, not letting that dictate how your performance is. Because if you let that dictate your performance and you don't use it to get better, you're kind of just going down that little rabbit hole of fear and anxiety that we've been talking about this entire episode. So yeah. That's pretty much all for my episode. I certainly hope you guys enjoyed what I had to say in this one. I certainly hope you guys enjoyed the things that I've talked about in this episode. If you have any questions that I did not cover in this episode, you have the wonderful opportunity to hit me up on any of my social medias that are linked in the description down below. Yes, please check the description. It's there for a reason. But you also have the comment section down there. Yes, I will try to comment as much as I can. They're there for a reason, and that's a way for you to interact with me. And of course, if you like what I'm doing and you wish to help me make better content, you have the wonderful opportunity to donate to me for a one-time donation at Ko-Fi. And of course, if you're unable to do any donations like that, you have the wonderful free options of liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel, because that does actually help, and it's absolutely for free. I don't understand why there's any aversion to this when it literally costs you nothing at all, and it does help me out immensely, as much as some people would try to tell you that it doesn't. They're lying to you. But yep, that's pretty much all for my episode. I certainly hope you guys enjoyed what I had to say. I absolutely love everybody who has shown me support, because I keep doing it for you guys, because that's what I do. I made this for you! Yeah. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I absolutely love you guys, but I am your host, Peter, aka Uppity Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.